Welcome to SplitSecond. If you want to buy the best sleeves or other magic-related accessories, head down to Dragon Shield using the affiliate link below. This week we have another strange pod. David is piloting Armix Resolution from Okami. Bal wanted to try out Rielle Tempo from Aeve. Diogo brought his spicy Jaxis combo list, and Elder put together an Aeve food chain combo list per patron request. David is going first and he kept his first 7 with a single exotic orchard for lands, but with a Jewel Lotus and Landmore Elves for some ramp. Early Tutor can find him a chunky beast, to be discarded through an early Armix and have reanimate quite early. Collector Aeve can slow down the table of Artifact ramp, and Eldritch Evolution can find him Seedborn through Armix and grind the match or any other value creature he might need. Bal had the mulligan down to 6, not wanting to go lower, finding a Misty Rainforest and an island for lands. Faithless Looting will most likely help on digging for mana or stuff to do, as Cyclonic Rift and Underworld Breach are mostly late game cards. Narset's Reversal can perhaps eat something of value from his opponents. He sent to the bottom Footfall Crater. Diogo also mulliganed aggressively to 6, finding 2 mountains and a Mox Diamond for a quick start. Cursed Mirror for some extra ramp and copying potential. Piratic Ritual can output Professional Facebreaker early if he so wishes or save it for a comboing turn. He sent Avacin's Judgment to the bottom. Last but not least, Elder kept his first 7 with 2 Forests and a Bazejo who endures for lands. Derogatory Speaker for semi-ramp, Sylvan Tutor and Natural Order can both help him pivot his game plan, and Crop Rotation usually has a Cradle written on them. Ready for the match? David starts his turn with an exotic orchard, not having found another land on top. He casts a Jewel Lotus and cracks it for his commander Armix Filigree Thrasher. If someone plays a Rainbow land, he can use his orchard for the Worldly Tutor and hopefully the reanimated hand. Bal plays a Misty Rainforest and cracks it for a Volcanic Island. He doesn't want to wait for Rielle as he casts his Faithless Looting, hoping to find some rocks. Diogo plays a mountain and casts a Mox Diamond, discarding another mountain. He casts a Gold Hound and passes. Elder plays a forest and casts a Derogatory Speaker, ending his turn. David ponders on his tutor, but he'd rather draw some black mana source for reanimate first. He didn't find any though, so he casts his Landmore Elves and attacks Bal for 3 before passing. Bal draws, plays an island, casts an Arcane Signet and passes. Diogo plays a Mikokoro Center of the Sea and casts his Professional Facebreaker. He attacks David with his Dog Treasure, creating another treasure with Facebreaker and passes. Elder plays a forest and levels up Derogatory Speaker, so he can then cast Sylvan Library and pass. David finally found the land he needed, a Wooded Foothills. He slams down his Collector Aeve, and Bal taps his Arcane Signet for blue in response, but it resolves, slowing Diogo only a bit as Facebreaker can still be an outlet for the treasures. He then attacks Elder for 3 since he has Sylvan Library and passes. Bal found no lands, but he exiles his Cement Spirit Guide for red to help cast his commander Rielle the Everwise. We're back to Diogo's turn. He plays a mountain and casts Cursed Mirror, which enters as a copy of Armix. He goes to combat and sends Facebreaker towards Bal, Goldhound towards Elder and Armix towards David, triggering and discarding a Piratic Ritual to kill David's Collector Aeve. Facebreaker triggers for 3 treasures and on his second main phase he starts activating them. A useless land, then a Goblin Engineer, which he casts and searches for Thornbite's Staff to his graveyard, which is the combo piece. Elder gets to his turn and pays 4 life to draw 1 extract from the library trigger. He casts Crop Rotation right away and searches for his Gaia's Cradle. He then casts a Sylvan Tutor and searches for a Kriran Regent to the top of his deck. He casts Elvish Visionary, entering and drawing the Ranger, which he casts right away. He then activates the Ranger, returning the Forest to his hand and untapping Derogatory Speaker. He plays the Forest and then casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing the Visionary as an additional cost. He finds Timur Sabertooth and is 1 step closer to infinite mana once he finds a Shaya. In the end step, David cracks his fetch to find a Bayou and then casts a Worldly Tutor, searching for a Jin Gitaxias or Augur to the top. He gets to his turn, draws and goes to combat right away. He sends Armix towards Diogo and discards the Praetor to its trigger, killing Goblin Engineer. In the second main phase, he casts his Reanimate on the Jin Gitaxias, losing a whopping 10 life. Before he gets to his end step, Bal casts a Mystical Tutor and finds a Red Elemental Blast to the top. Gitaxias and triggers and David draws 7, not finding much interaction though. He discards a bunch at cleanup and Bal gets to his turn. He jumps to combat and attacks David with Rielle for 4 commander damage. David doesn't block, and before damage, Bal fires his Red Blast on Jin Gitaxias, which does resolve. Bal still fires an Izzet Charm, hoping to dig deeper as well as hit David for more damage, but in response to it, David fires a Chain of Vapor on Rielle, and Bal's efforts are gone. He decides not to copy it and then the charm resolves. He plays an Otawara and passes. Diogo gets to his turn, and needing to find outs, he cracks a treasure through Facebreaker and finds Atsushi the Blazing Sky, which he casts without blinking. He goes to combat and sends Facebreaker towards David and Goldhound towards Baal for 2 more treasures, ending his turn. Elder taps and draws 1 extra from the library, paying 4 life. He plays a Gemstone Caverns and casts a Birds of Paradise, which he proceeds to sacrifice to cast a Natural Order, floating 1 green mana. However, as both decks pass priority, the red deck says, "Nah, not on my watch. Tibalt is here to play with you," and Elder randomly mills 2 cards, only to then hit a Turn Timber Symbiosis, which could still do the deal. He didn't find a Shaya, but he found a Beast Whisperer, which is not bad either. This way, he taps Jiraga for 2 green and activates Quirin Ranger to untap them and bounces the Ranger with Timber Sabertooth. He recasts the Ranger, triggering Beast Whisperer and drawing a card, and ends his turn. David draws, casts a Lion's Eye Diamond, now being able to kill bigger prey. He casts a Mystic Remora and then goes to combat, attacking Elder for 3, triggering Armix, discarding a Birds of Paradise to kill Elder's Timber Sabertooth. Elder takes 3 and David passes. Baal draws, casts his Rielle from hand and fires his Ancestral Recall, Burning Inquiry. Remora triggers and he can't pay. Everyone groans as they draw 3 and discard 3 randomly, while Baal still gets to draw 3 after that, through Rielle's trigger. He plays an island and passes. Diogo draws and only has that 1 card in hand, so he cracks his treasure to Facebreaker and reveals a Staff of Domination, which he'd rather have in the yard. He then casts his commander, Jaxis the Troublemaker, by their Blitz cost, and activates it right away, targeting Professional Facebreaker, discarding a Wheel of Misfortune he would never want to cast with Rielle in play. He then goes to combat and sends Flample Dragon towards Elder, while each Facebreaker to Baal and David for 6 more treasures from their triggers. In the second main phase, he activates Facebreaker, revealing a mountain and playing it. He finds a Heat Shimmer, which he casts on his Atsushi, Remora triggers and he can't pay. And since Atsushi is legendary, due to the legend rule, he puts the copy into the graveyard as a state-based action, triggering and choosing to create 3 more treasures, so he can keep digging with Facebreaker. He finds another ritual and then an altar. He now finds a Direfleet Daredevil, but whilst most graveyards have good stuff, he's digging carefully not to fill David's hand through Remora. He finds a Sol Ring and is really sad for not being able to cast most of that stuff. 1 more treasure and he finds a Cloudstone Curio. Now this one he can let go through, and casts it, even cracking his Goldhound. Remora triggers and he can't pay. He proceeds to end step, triggering Facebreaker copy to be sacrificed and drawing a card through the Jaxis as well as their delayed Blitz trigger. Elder taps and keeps up with those 4 life being paid for 1 extra card. He did find what he was looking for, a Shaya Soul of the Wild, but in response to that, David is forced to react with an abrupt decay on Quirin Ranger, or else Elder would win on the spot. Infinite Quirin Ranger casts, drawing the deck through Beast Whisperer, finding Concordant Crossroads and swarming the board with Eves. Elder accepts it and hopes to find some recursion, which Green has plenty. He draws from Beast Whisperer and then also casts an Arbor Elf, triggering Whisperer again. He casts a Wild Growth on his Gemstone Caverns, triggering Remora and he can't pay, ending his turn. David taps and lets the fish go. He plays a Command Tower and casts Survival of the Fittest. He follows it with a careful study, hoping to find some reanimation stuff, but it's not one of his days, so he passes. Baal draws and ponders for a second. He flashbacks Faithless Looting, drawing 2, discarding 2 and then drawing 2 from Rielle's trigger. He then casts a Failure Stone and plays a Cephalid Coliseum. He then attacks Diogo for 10 commander damage and passes. Diogo gets to his turn, taps a mountain for red mana and then plays another mountain, triggering Cloudstone Curio, and returning the tapped mountain, actually surprising the players at the table. This way, he recasts Jaxis for its Blitz cost, still having a card to discard to it as he activates them, targeting Atsushi, which once again, due to the legend rule, the token is put into the graveyard as a state-based action, and he creates 3 treasures and draws a card through the copy's trigger. He then goes to combat and attacks David for 2 and Baal for 4, triggering Facebreaker for 2 more treasures, which he starts cracking to exile the top card of his library. He doesn't find much he could do with those, so he casts a Magus of the Moon from his hand. David has no basics in his deck, but Armix can deal with that, so he passes and Baal takes the opportunity to crack his Cephalid Coliseum, targeting himself. However, Diogo responds with a Deflecting Swat, changing the target to himself, as everyone else has plenty of cards in hand. In response to this, David activates Survival of the Fittest, discarding an Eternal Witness and finding a Rezacat to his hand. Diogo draws 3, discards 3 and then Magus enters play and Ashaya dies to state-based actions. Since Ashaya becomes a mountain, it loses its text, which is what defines the characteristic defining ability that sets their power and toughness values, and by not being able to determine the value of X in the power and toughness box, the game uses 0 instead, so Ashaya is put into the Elder's graveyard and he sadly gets to his turn, once again delayed. He pays 4 life for an extra card from the library trigger, as he should tread carefully now. He casts Selvala Art of the Wild, drawing a card from Beast Whisperer and passes. David found a good one, a Gaia's Mountain, but not for long, as he attacks Diogo with Armix, discarding Razakat, and killing Mags of the Moon with it. In the second main phase, he casts a Demonic Tutor, searching for an Animate Dead to his hand, which he casts right away, targeting Razaketh. However, Elder was expecting that, and he evokes an Endurance, pitching a Vivian to it and drawing a card with Beast Whisperer. Endurance enters, and there goes David's graveyard, all gone. He still casts a Sylvan Library and passes. Bal gets to his turn and plays a Bazaar of Baghdad, which he wished he had played instead of Cephalical Elysian last turn, as this one doesn't target. He activates it right away, drawing 2, discarding 3 lands and drawing 3 more cards due to Rielle. He then ponders his options and casts a Gamble, searching for a Teferi Master of Time, hoping to dig some cards as well as have the option to remove some threatening combo creature. He randomly discards Brain Freeze, and now swings Rielle towards Diogo for lethal commander damage. He protests that he saved the table from Elder, but it's not enough. Bal unknowingly saved the table, as Diogo had just figured a bit too late that he had a win last turn. With Cloudstone Curio, Diogo could create a copy of Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, entering and dying to the legend rule, triggering Cloudstone to bounce Jaxis, and its die trigger creating 3 treasures. The copy created through Jaxis also draws him a card, and he could repeatedly cast Jaxis from hand through its blaze cost of 2 and activating for 1 red, all done with the 3 treasures Atsushi would provide. This unseemingly deadly combination of cards would allow him to dig through his deck 1 card at a time, hoping to find Dockside or any other outlet. Well, in Bal's second main phase, he casts a Mana Crypt, and follows it with his Teferi Master of Time, which he upticks, drawing and discarding a card, and with the last floating mana, he casts a Blood Moon that he also found. Elder has fought for many things, and even this Blood Moon won't leave a dent, as he draws 1 extra from the library trigger. He plays a basic forest and casts a Reclamation Sage. Beast Whisperer triggers, and Bal responds by activating Teferi, drawing and discarding, and drawing 1 from Rielle's trigger. Elder draws and Sages resolves, entering and targeting Blood Moon for good. With Cradle free again, Elder tries to storm off a bit, as he now casts his own Cloudstone Curio. He taps Cradle for 5 and activates Selvala for an extra green. With a total of 6 green mana, he casts Vivian Monster's Advocate, resolving and allowing him to look at the top card of his library. He upticks Vivian, creating a 3/3 green beast, entering with a reach counter on it, and triggering Cloudstone Curio, returning an Arbor Elf to his hand. He then casts Metamorphosis, sacrificing Reclamation Sage as an additional cost, and generating 4 green mana to cast creature spells only. He recasts Arbor Elf, drawing a card from Beast Whisperer. Curio triggers and he returns Tree Speaker to his hand, which he recasts, triggering Beast Whisperer again and triggering Curio as it enters play, but he decides not to return anything else to hand, as he now casts Allosaurus Shepherd, triggering Beast Whisperer 1 last time and proceeding to combat, attacking Teferi with Beast Whisperer before passing. David untaps, draws, but keeps only 1 card with his library trigger, as he has enough to shuffle the top. He goes to combat and attacks Teferi with the Armix, which Bal activates, drawing, discarding and then drawing with Rielle's trigger. In the second main phase, David casts Thrasios and follows it with an Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Armix as an additional cost. Both players pass priority and the grind seems to be starting just now. Bal and David untap, and Bal wins his crit roll. He found and cast a Frantic Search, drawing 2, discarding 2, and tapping 3 lands and then drawing 2 more. Digging 4 cards deep for free seems to be a good way to find answers, as Bal just cast this beautifully altered Gilded Drake by MSJ Altars at Tier 1 Con. David doesn't even bother reacting much, hoping to activate Thrasios later, as Gilded Drake just exchanges control over Seedborn, which, alongside Bazaar of Baghdad and Rielle, produces similar results on Bal's side. What players weren't expecting was the Pyroclasm Bal just put on the stack. Now David responds while he can still use 2 mana from the Dark and Cradle. He scries to the bottom and reveals a Flusterstorm, but doesn't fire it. Bal is not done just yet. He activates the Fairy, drawing and discarding, and then casts a Firestorm, discarding 2 cards as an additional cost, to ping Thrasios and the 3/3 Beast for good. With a single card left in hand, Bal turns Rielle sideways towards Elder and kills him, only 1 player to go. Will David make it? He only draws 1 from the Sylvan Library and then casts an Imperial Seal, searching for an Endurance to the top, hoping to stop Bal at his nonsense next turn. He still attacks the Fairy in the air as he has removal at hand. Bal activates it in response, drawing, discarding and then drawing again due to Rielle. Teferi is gone and David passes, but on Bal's upkeep he holds him there and casts his Assassin's Trophy on Rielle. However, the card Bal had saved was a Force of Will, which he hardcasts the old-fashioned way. David does cast Flusterstorm, but Bal has plenty to pay for and enough damage on board, so David scoops it up. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. Armix proved to be great at controlling the board off of key creatures, but Jaxis and Double Face Breaker allowed for great digging potential from Diogo. Eventually though, Endurance prevented the Vid to go for it, and Rielle slowly killed 3 opponents from combat damage alone. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, TJ Rap, Mike Purr, Ajimu, Dragonhouse Cat, V, RJ, Heated Chill, Pina, Ricardo, Dragonstake, Katarina, Michael Bowen, Super Scaldi, Dog, Wyatt, Wicked, Zinan, New Gunsmith, and CJ Wally, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.